What's going on, guys? It's your Javi David St. Clair Speaks, and you are now tuned in to the St. Clair Speaks Show.
You are now tuned in to the St. Clair Speaks Show.
Welcome back to the St. Clair Speaks Show podcast. I'm your host, Javi St. Clair, sitting down with another incredible guest. This is going to be a good one. I'm sitting down with Judy M Baker. She helps businesses and authors get more bang for their book by turning intellectual property into multiple streams of income with minimal effort. After conquering cancer back in 2014, she became an author, an advocate, and self-publishing evangelist. Oh, that's a good word. Use that in context. Her workshops and her one-on-one mentoring have pretty much energized hundreds of authors to build more awareness about themselves through books and their businesses. Judy shows how small strategic action steps can build your audience to grab organic or attention. Super excited to have Judy on the show. Even right before we're here on this podcast now, we spoke briefly a couple days ago and we were talking about story, and I got a little bit more fired up. And I'm like, I have to sideline and write some questions out because I want to talk about story and the power of everyone taking control of their story. Judy, I want to welcome you to the St. Clair Speaks Show podcast. Please give our listeners 3 to 5 minute introduction on yourself, your brand, your business, and what brings you onto the show.
Hi. Well, I'm so glad to be here, Yahavi. I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you and with your listeners. And just a little bit, an actress, and that was kind of my goal for most of my life. But when I decided to switch gears a little bit, I still stayed with communication. And communication takes a lot of different forms, everything from the written word to performing to our voice. And I've used all of those ideas and the things that I learned growing up because I was very, very, very shy. And I realized that if I stayed shy, I wasn't going to make connections with people. So I started learning how to get out of my own way, focusing on other people. And over time, I built my business first with graphic design and then marketing communication, taking over with coaching and strategy. And in 2011, I walked into the Independent Book Publishers Association conference and went, oh my goodness, I am with my tribe. I'm with people who are passionate about connecting, about telling stories, all different kinds of stories. And I saw a need that authors, I'm an author. I write poetry and memoir and short stories and nonfiction. Most of us are kind of introverted and we are not comfortable talking about ourselves. And every time I would go to an event, I would see these authors with great books, but nobody would be able to find out about them because of their introversion, of their being afraid to speak up. So I said, I can help. I can help people get out of their way. And I love writing. I love where I live here in Sonoma, California, which is beautiful. And I've been here for a very long time, but I keep responding to changes in the industry. And that's how I got to be a book marketing mentor.
Okay. My ears jumped up when you mentioned being an introvert. I want to jump right into it. I want to talk about challenges after, publishing a book and, maybe things to avoid after publishing a book and maybe things prior that you want to avoid.
Okay. Well, that's perfect. That's perfect thing to be looking at. When you look at what are the challenges to publishing before, after, some of them are the same, but you might not even realize it. Often, this is something that people don't think about as much as they need to. You could have the wrong price on your book. Some authors, especially first timers, will not look at who else is published with a similar book. and they think they have to make back the money they invested on publishing, and they'll overprice their book. Or, especially with nonfiction, you can sometimes have a higher price than what is typical for your book. So if it's priced too low, people aren't going to look at it. If it's priced too high, people won't look at it. But if you're an expert and maybe you're kind of a unicorn, you can probably have a higher price on your book than you think. But don't think about putting the calculations in to say, oh, I want to make X number of dollars, because the book sales are not typically where you make your money. You make money on getting booked as a speaker, doing higher paying consulting opportunities, or actually creating other content from your book. So that's number one. Number two is your book cover. What are people seeing in your book cover? If you have a book cover that is ugly, can't be read, and remember, most of us are looking at a little teeny tiny image of your book cover. Even if it's a print book, when people are searching in different retail places, they're not seeing this big book on a shelf. They're seeing it on screen. And if it can't be read at a very small size, you've killed yourself. Also, colors can make a difference. And like I said, my background in graphic design, you want to make it easy for people to read and digest your cover. If you have a short title, you can have a huge subtitle, but make that short title provocative. Get people's interest, but be clear about what your book is about. And then in the subtitle, you can pack it with keywords that people are searching for. And it gives a really long description. I mean, I'll give you an example. One of my clients published a book called Taxpertise. She's an enrolled agent, and she wrote about all the things that those of us who are self-employed can do to save money, but the IRS doesn't tell you those things. So her subtitle is The Dirty Little Secrets the IRS Doesn't Want You to Know. That's a long subtitle. So take advantage of that. And that comes back to the title. So really be sure you've got a good title. The keywords and categories are what people are searching on. So when you go to a search engine, whether it is Amazon, Google, could be something else, those keywords are what are going to pop up and determine if people find your book. When it comes to categories, when you first publish your book, no matter what place you're putting it up there, usually you only get 2 or 3 categories. But after you've published, you can go back in and go to Amazon customer support in Author Central and say, I would like to add these additional categories. And you can have up to 10. So when it comes to categories, if I've written a book on a subject, and so my book would be on book marketing, I would want to go and see who else wrote a book on book marketing and who are the top sellers, and take a look at the descriptions that they're using and the words they're using and what people are searching for. Then I can go back in and kind of do what people do on Facebook and other places. I want to mirror that. So I could even put in my keywords, I could put in that competitive author's name. And then when people are searching on that name, my book will come up. So those are some of the things you can do. And did you know this? Even if you haven't self-published, but mostly for self-publishers, you can go back in, revise your title, and put that in instead. So if the first title isn't working, change it. If your book cover isn't working, and you go in and change the book cover, keeping the same title, because maybe the title is working, you can continue to tweak what's showing up so that it does engage people and it connects with them. So those are some of the things to think about. And the biggest mistake authors make, they get all excited for the book launch and then they forget what happens after. So just like people who plan for a wedding and then they don't plan for the marriage, you're missing out. It's a long tail conversation. You can make money from your book long after it's published, as long as you keep yourself visible. And those authors that come on podcasts, who write blog posts, who put articles in LinkedIn, they are staying top of mind. And video, if audio and video are exploding. And in fact, audiobooks are growing at about double their impact every year. And I believe it's now a $70 billion industry, and it's continuing to explode. So does that help? Does that help give you an idea of what to do?
It helps a lot. Took a couple notes here, right? Good design is good business, is what they say. But from my takeaway from what you just said is the same amount of effort needs to go into the design, the marketing, as it does writing the book, coming up with the idea for the book, the theme. Then you mentioned something which is really key: niche, keywords, right? What are they searching for? What are they looking for? That's big, because you don't think about that in a moment. Oh, I want to write a book, but they don't think about all of that other stuff, right? There's writing the book, then there's in between.
Well, the marketing actually is probably more critical than almost everything, other than writing a really good book, making sure it's well edited. But if you don't let people know about the book, then you might as well not have put in all that energy. The way people hear about your book has changed. Word of mouth is still really valuable. You might say, oh, people are only going to know about me if I spend a bunch of money on advertising. Well, advertising can only go so far. But when people talk about your book, that's when it goes viral. And it may not come from an ad. Now, I'm not discouraging people from doing ads, but you'll do a lot better if you are talking to the people on your email list. And in fact, those authors who have continued to be successful and will tell you the thing that they didn't do the first time is they didn't grow an email list. And what I'm talking about is you could take a chapter from your book and make that into an offer, a lead magnet, and get people reading and then tell them where to go to buy your book. But what you're doing is this. You want to have people on your email list so that you can talk to them directly. And then you're not dependent on, well, is this showing up? Is somebody seeing this or not seeing this? Email is very intimate. When I send you an email and you open it, that's the only thing you're doing right then. And over time, if you're cultivating your community using email, you can make sure that there's excitement for your book, that you can request help spreading the word. And authors who are very savvy know this. They will create graphics for their audience to share. They'll make a request of, say, oh, this is a good one. Oh, this is funny. A friend of mine did this. This is old. This is a cassette tape. This is how old this is. But when she did Instant Guts, she is she's a copywriter, and she made a lot of fun things about this. So you want to make it fun for people to share the information. And when you're in that conversation, you can ask for, ideas. You can say, oh, would you share this with your friends and make it easy? And there's a secret that a lot of authors don't know. Inside your book, both in the front few pages and in the back pages, you could include a QR code to take people to your website, to get on your email list, to do all kinds of things. But when you make it easy, people will take action, and you need to ask for help.
All right. Yeah, that was Q code to email. That's a really good one. Yeah, people are getting really creative. That's nice. Awesome. All right. So you made a really good point. Not just now when you were just answering that question, but even before, long after people are purchasing books. How many books have you purchased that were published years ago? Years ago. We do this without even paying attention to it, right? We buy books from the late 90s, the 80s, the 70s, early 2000s. And there's also the revamp, right? Revamping a book. How many times have we seen books? Like, for example, one of my favorite books is The Power of Positive Thinking. But I've seen this book in different formats, right? We publish differently. So can you talk to us about that exactly, right? Having a book in one format version, then later republishing it, because this is I have a really old copy, and I'm old school, right? I'm old school. And I like I like the typos, like the old literature. So I prefer the older version versus the newer version. Can you talk to us about that?
Absolutely. When you've got a book, I'll use another illustration. The late Jim Horan wrote the one-page business plan 29 years ago. And throughout his career, he took that one book and he would customize it and he would revise it. And there'd be different covers. There would be maybe some additional information in there. And so he had, the original book, and then he, had different flavors based on the audience, creatives, financial industry, consultants. And just like in the grocery store, you go in the grocery store and I'll tell you, you can probably find 5 different packages of baking soda. One's in the cleaning department, one's in cooking, it's marketing. It is marketing. And if you've got a book that's been out for a while, sometimes you do have new information. And so you might do a revised edition. That's another opportunity. It's another ISBN number. It's a new number. It's another way to get people's attention, breathe life into it. And like you were saying, if you look at some of the books that are out there, the big publishing houses have been doing this for years, and now independent publishers are doing it too. You could find probably 10 different covers. If, say, look for Shakespeare, you're going to find you're going to find all these different covers, and one might speak to you, one might not speak to you. And I know I've got some books in several different iterations because I wanted that physical book. But think about your audience. Are they listeners? Do you have an audiobook version? Do you have an ebook? Do you have a print book? When people love your stuff, they will often buy it in all of the various formats. And with nonfiction especially, you could take your book and you could create a workbook from that. So you're not creating a whole lot more effort, or you're not using a lot more effort to create another companion piece that goes with your book. and it stimulates sales. And one of my clients did this. She had her workbook. She has a large book, which is Roberta's Rules of Order. So it's a collaborative way of running meetings that's more effective, where everybody gets involved in setting the ground rules. But her workbook comes in a flat, perfect bound edition, or you can get it as a spiral bound, because some people want to have it in that format. So you want to find out, how do people want to use what you have produced? Do they want to listen? Do they want to read it? Do they want to look at it on mobile devices? And the fact of the matter is, the United States is the only place this isn't true, but the rest of the world, they're reading on mobile, from phones to tablets to you name it. More than 60% of the consumption of material is on mobile devices. And if you're not making your product available, and I said product because your book is a product, if you're not doing that, you're missing out on a huge segment that would love to get your book.
Okay. I was just itching to jump in. So there's also, I'm looking at it from the educational side, right? I see this a lot. There are series of books, right? And that is, in my opinion, it's just a great way of building brand, and it kind of like repackaging and repushing that product in a different light. And I love that. So I want to talk, you mentioned podcasting before, and I want to swing back to this because I get very excited about this. And this is probably my first time saying this on the air. Maybe I could talk about a little bit more about what I do and how I leverage a lot.
Yeah.
So authors, when they come on my show, and this is something I've been doing for the last 2 years, authors especially. Yeah, hey, I want to get on the show. Great. In exchange for an interview, I would like a free signed copy of your book. So Judy, for the past 2 years, could you not, I have a library of books, every author that was on the show, and I interviewed them. It started with this one author, and that was my aha moment. Loved the book. It was Michael Zuber that I interviewed earlier on, and I did a book review for him. I recorded a 30-second video, and I sent it to him, and it was just great. And that was the aha moment. It is more so because you come on the show, you're helping me, but what's another way for me to help you? And my question is about giving away like a free copy of your book, to leverage more. I'm all about community. The people that listen to my show, they love the content. So it's always it excites me because you're one book away from changing your life. Why can't that book be yours? So when I read that book, I get excited. I'm like, wow, this is a really good book. Let me do a 30-second video review. Here, share this with whomever, and just to get more eyes and ears in your book. Can you talk about that? Because I'm not seeing enough authors push the brand. They're just sharing the Amazon link. That's not good enough.
No, it isn't. And there's an alternative to that. Draft to Digital has a free, it's a separate website. It's connected. It's called books2read.com. And I'm going to urge every author out there, if you haven't done this, you want to go to books2read.com and claim your universal book link. So just like you have a URL and you can have a custom URL, you can have a universal book link. And what this does is you put the ISBN into the search engine at Books to Read, and it'll show all of the retail outlets that sell your book, from Barnes and Noble, Amazon, Kobo, you name it. And you can say, I want these outlets to display when people go to my universal book link. Then you put that one universal book link up, and then it lets me, the consumer, decide, oh, I want to do IndieBound, or I want to do Bookshop, or I want to do, wherever I want to buy that book, I can buy that book. And I mean, do you want to have to sort through all this stuff? So when authors do that, they're making it easy for people to buy their book. And this is something you probably already know this, but a lot of authors don't. If you only exist in one system, like Amazon's KDP, you're missing out because that's only one system. And retailers are not buying from Amazon. They're buying through Ingram Spark. They could buy from you direct. And that's something that's really starting to take off. Authors now have tools where they can sell their books directly from their websites without having to go through all of these other places. So we're going to be seeing more and more of that happening. But yeah, having your book widely available makes a lot more sense. And looking at selling direct, and there's, well, Shopify and Lulu, it's super simple. If you put your book up for sale through Lulu Express and use Shopify, then people just go right there. And again, you get to capture their email when they do it that way as well. So I want to encourage people to take a look at that. That's a newer option, and it's not the only one, but it does make a lot of sense to do that.
I'm really impressed. This sounds like writing a book sounds like a team sport. It's a team sport because my mind is kind of like racing because I wrote a book before, and now I'm seeing all the things I did wrong just listening to us talk today, because I'm realizing my intentions and my goal behind the book was just to write the book. All that other stuff could be delegated, and this is where your business and your services come in. What are you doing to take that stress factor off of your clients to help them succeed in their book launch and their book marketing?
One of the biggest issues that causes stress with book marketing and the book launch is putting so much energy into a single day. So the book launch is fun. It's a celebration, and I don't want to diminish that. I want people, and I want authors to remember they wrote the book because they had something they wanted to share. They want to make an impact on the world. And that is not going to stop after that single day. But too many times authors try to do too many things. They try to be everywhere, and they're consequently not reaching their ideal audience. I believe it's better to start small. So if I know I like hanging out on LinkedIn, and that's where I have most of my conversations, where people find me, where people can, really see how qualified I am, then I'm going to focus on LinkedIn when I'm doing my launch. I'm going to, seed articles. I'm going to, invite people to follow me, to, get the book. Oh, and you asked me a question before, and I didn't answer that, about giving books away.
Yeah,
Oh,
that too.
I'm
At
sorry.
any point you can answer that whenever.
Giving books away might seem counterintuitive, but it's not. I know two authors who gave away over 500 copies of their books, each of them. And one continued to do that forever and ever and ever. When you give your book away, think about how you feel when you get a gift. You're honored. It's important. And if I give that to you, what if I gave you 2 copies? What if I said, here's a copy for you, and here's a copy for someone you believe will benefit from this book? Already, there's this different connection happening. There is excitement. There is a feeling of being special. And the likelihood that the person you gave that book to, and then the second person who received it, they feel so good about it. They're more likely when you ask them to give a review, and they can say that, they were given the book. That's okay. That's not buying the review. It's saying give an honest review. That stimulates the conversation, which is really what you're trying to do. The more you can be generous and kind when you're doing your book marketing, which is really sharing your story, sharing your expertise, you will benefit from that. And you'll have more book sales by giving books away. And there's some other ways you can do that. You could post it on a social channel. But always start with the social channel where you feel the most comfort and you are the most active. You can always add, but don't try to do more than you can get your arms around. And there are VAs, virtual assistants, who are specialists in supporting authors. And I've got some resources for people who are looking for exactly that kind of a team. You can't do everything yourself. I mean, unless you just want to abandon your business and not be working and helping your clients. But you can do a little bit at a time and you'll have big results. But if you plan ahead, then you can have some assets ready. You can have some graphics. You can have quotes from your book. There's a lot you can do. And when you said you did a video review, I do that when I review books for Amazon and other places, because that video, I can post it on YouTube. I can put it in my LinkedIn profile. I can put it all over the place. So I'm getting recognition at the same time I'm supporting that book. So having a plan is number one. If you have a plan, it's a whole lot easier than, just like everybody says, looking at a blank sheet of paper is frightening. But if you know, oh, here's 10 different things I can do today, and I pick one, then I can get that action accomplished and I feel good about it. And when you do a small action, you're more likely to repeat it. So that's kind of my tip about, not getting overwhelmed. And sometimes you just have to step back for a second and go, oh, what do I really want to do? With podcasting, you need to plan a long time in advance, because sometimes you're booked and that show's not going to air for months. So if you know your book is coming out in September, probably around April, May, you should start looking for opportunities to get booked on a show. And you'll already have your cover done, or at least you'll have close to the final, so that you can really give that podcast host the assets they need. And be sure you have a place on your website where it's easy for people to connect with you and help you tell your story.
I'm getting, as the minutes go on, my mind is opening up more and more and more and more with just so many different questions and aha moments. And now I'm having a lot of kickbacks of memories. So this past summer, I went to Boston and I met my mentor that I actually met through my podcast, by the way. Great way of meeting people. So I met my mentor through the podcast. He's a real estate investor, but he's also an author. And the book that he launched is actually a series. So it's called Cash Flow Secrets, but it's a series. And he gave me a free copy, initially right before he got on the show. Then he invited me, and I wasn't even paying attention to this at the moment. He invited all of us to this real estate construction tour rehab in Boston.
Mm-hmm.
And he had a giveaway goodie bag. And guess what was in the goodie bag? Not only resourceful real estate information, free t-shirts and hats, but another free copy of his book, and everyone got that attended. So I'm just I'm just a little taken back because I'm seeing this a lot. People are getting very creative with getting their books out there and including it in events. And I want to talk to you about, I've heard this before, and maybe I've heard this on a podcast or something like that. You know, some authors, they would leverage speaking engagements. They would get really creative, Judy. Yeah, I'll come in and speak, if you get 100 copies of my book.
Right.
Or, they come in, they speak for the experience, but then they sell at the back of the room if, they like the presentation, they bring the books. Can you
Right.
talk to us about book marketing with events? Because I'm seeing it now. I'm definitely seeing it. I was a part of one. Can you talk to us about like ways to get creative with that? What are clients doing, and if they're not doing that, right? Because earlier, right in the beginning, you talk about being an introvert. Being an introvert is hurting authors,
Mm-hmm.
right? If it's not in person, the virtual aspect too. How can that work with book marketing and events?
Well, you brought up a really good point. Having your book in a gift bag, that's genius, because there could be 100 speakers, but you're the only one that's doing that. You're the smart one because you're giving something of great value. And the likelihood that people, they're seeing the book, they're reading the book, and the idea about selling from the back of the room, that one works, because people, when they know, I know you've heard this 100 million times, the know, like, trust factor. If you know me, you like me, and you trust me, you're more likely to buy something from me, and you want to take that home with you, because that's a piece of me. And so there's this feeling that, oh, I've got this warm feeling right now, and I really am excited, and I want you, and I'm going to take you home. And you also brought up the series. So if I've got a series of books and I put the first one in, I mean, a lot of authors, do this. They'll give away the first book in a series because people then tend to read through and they want the next one. It's a way to stimulate the relationship. And it's very, very good marketing to say, I'm going to come speak to your group, whether it's virtually or in person, and, include in the cost of my speaking. Or you can say, I'll speak for free, but you buy X number of copies. That all works because you are guaranteed that big, chunk of sales. And with more events happening hybrid, in person, online, you can still do that. And this is something that one of the authors I know did. It was a virtual event, and they said, if you'd like a copy of my book, here, they had a QR code. They had a slide with the QR code. Here's the QR code, took them to where they could go to then get the book for free. And you can do that through systems like Book Funnel. There's all different ways to do this. But again, you're making it easy for people to do this. And always have books with you. Oh my gosh. Even if you're not the speaker at the event, you need to have your books with you because you're making connections. If people find out you're an author, which they will, because you're going to say, I'm a published author, this is the title of my book. And you always have books with you, and you can sell books to people you're talking to. I'm going to 2 conferences in July. So this month, there's the San Francisco Writers Conference, which is one of the biggest, best conferences ever. Trust me, everybody's going to have their books. There's a bookstore in the middle of the hotel where, it's set up for people to buy books. And then I'm going to the Napa Valley Writers Conference. Same thing. People who are authors buy books. We love to support each other. And our clients want to support us. And people who are interested in what we're doing want to support us. So always look for opportunities to be available at a conference, trade show. Put that into your contract that if you're going to be a speaker, that your books are going to be available, that people can buy them. They can, buy them on site, or they can buy them from you later, however you want to do it. But always make sure that you are prepared by having your books available and ready for sale.
Yeah, you always got to keep your books with you. You never know who you're going to run into. Always keep your books with you.
Yep.
I want to kind of like swing back. Setting expectations, realistic expectations. Because Judy, I'm sure you've met potential clients or clients that have that expectation. I want to be an international best-selling author, overnight, they want that. How do you bring people to that reality? Yes, it's obtainable, but for some, not for everyone.
No.
What makes, I guess the better question I would say is, what makes someone a best-selling author?
Oh boy, that's an interesting one.
Because the reason why I ask is because everyone wants to be a best-selling author. I want to be a best-selling author. I've ran across people who have aspirations to be a best-selling author, and they say they have these goals of writing so many different books. They launch one, they don't hit that status, they get discouraged, so they don't write anymore. So how do we get past that wall of quote unquote expectation?
Oh boy. I'm glad you brought up the idea about expectation, because that's usually the first question I ask authors. What does success look like for you? Because it's a different answer. Some people say, yes, I want to be number one on, this list, Amazon, New York Times, you name it. And those things can happen. It depends on how much time and money you want to throw at it. That's part of the equation. I'm not going to lie. That does have a lot to do with it. More often than not, the people who hit, this huge international bestseller, it's not by chance. They've been slogging away for a while. They have done the work. They've worked in their community. People know about them. They have invested in public relations, which is different than marketing, because the public relations is about getting known, getting seen in a different way. It's not about saying, buy my book, buy my book. It's about, what is the story behind the story? Who are you? Why is your voice important right now? If you think about this, the fact that when Amanda Gorman was on the stage for President Biden and read her poetry, and what happened after that, it just blew up. That wasn't her first time being out there in the world, but she was on a bigger platform, but she had been on smaller platforms long before that. She'd been on other stages. She had done the work, and it was the right time for her message in the way that she delivered it. And there was something really unusual that happened during the pandemic. poetry, which used to be like no one buys poetry. People would say, don't bother, don't even go there. Poetry has gotten into our heads. More people are writing poetry. More people are taking the opportunity to read poetry. And because her message resonated with us so strongly with what was going on in the world, and tying your book to current events that are powerful, that can make a huge difference in whether or not you are selling your books. And to me, it's more important to be looking at, am I selling my books consistently over time? You can get to a bigger number of books sold when your book continues to sell and people are still talking about it. So paying attention to where you fit and what are the bigger conversations going on, and how do you tie your book into those bigger conversations can impact your book sales. And if you want to be an international best-selling author, start talking to people around the world who have the problem your book can solve. That's how you sell books.
It kind of goes back to the early point, and I was asking you about niche, right?
Yes.
Poetry is doing good. Poetry is not for everyone, right? Sticking with what you know, sell what you know, go with what you know. Because if you're really bad with self-improvement, oh man, that's going to be a really good book, right? It's kind of just going with what you know. You don't want to get pulled in different directions, kind of like just niche down.
Right.
I guess that's where a lot of people get stuck. At what point, this is a really good question. I was thinking about this. At what point do clients reach out to you? When do we need Judy Baker's help? Like, at what point do we need your help before we even launch to start writing? Do we need it at the midway point? After? At what point should clients say, okay, this is where they need to schedule a call with you?
In a perfect world, you would talk to me when you first have your idea for a book. But if you're a first-time author, you probably don't know that. But if we start talking, then we can look at who's your audience? What problems are you solving? Are you speaking their language in a way they can understand it? And that's important. And looking at the overall picture of who do you want to be? How is this going to, show up in the world? What do I want to do with my book? That would be great to start from the beginning. But since we know that that doesn't happen all the time, the next place would be, well, my sweet spot is looking at, authors who've published, but they forgot about what's after the launch, and how we can take their content and make sure that now we're stimulating conversations. It's okay. Some books don't sell well when they first are published. Stephen Donaldson writes epic fantasy dystopian books. And he said, one of my books, it took 10 years before it became a bestseller. Now, he has a lot of books out there, so I'm not going to, say he's a one-hit wonder, because he's not. But he didn't take that book, he didn't unpublish it. He left that book out there. And as more people read it, more people started talking about it. And they said, oh, did you read this book? And, it's just fabulous. Stimulating the conversation is what I do. My belief is all marketing is a conversation. It's having a discourse with people. It's talking to people. It's listening to them. So, you and I are having a conversation, and you said you published your book, and now you're going, oh, I think I did this, this, and this wrong. Well, we could look at, how do we, relaunch your book? You can do that. It's okay. They reissue movies, they reissue books, it's another way to say, oh, you might have missed it the first time, but wow, here is this great solution. There's never a bad time to start thinking about the marketing for your book, whether it's before, whether it's during the launch, whether it's after the launch. Books don't go bad like a carton of milk. So why would you market as if you've only got this little teeny window? If you continue to talk about your content and give your book to your clients, what a great way to stimulate people's interest. Some of them are going to buy it right off the bat, but what if you sent your book to every one of your clients and said, I wanted to be sure this was in your hands. You inspired me with your success, and I wanted to help other people learn about this. So anywhere in the journey, but especially for those of you who have published and are going, nothing's going on. Let's have a conversation and let's look at how you're showing up.
Powerful point you said of what all conversations is marketing. It's very powerful. It's very powerful, right? That's Jim. You quote that one. You kind of answered my next question, was kind of like tied into the revamp and the relaunch of a book, right? So life is meant to be long term. So it is the long term game. Going back to what we talked about earlier, we do this all the time, but we buy books that were published years ago, 20 years ago, 10 years ago. We often do that. It kind of does ease, if you're listening to this right now and you have aspirations to launch a book, write a book, and this is something you want to do. This is why I love podcasting so much, because for me, sometimes I don't know if I'm doing an interview or it's just a full-on coaching session. But this seems like this was a conversation for the community, but also a live coaching session, right? These are tough, really good questions. I like the question that I asked you, right? At what point do they reach out to you, right? Because if you're someone that you think you could do it all by yourself, from my understanding now, this is definitely a team sport, right? And there's a lot more boxes that need to be checked off. It's not just creating a good product, but if there's no marketing behind that, how do you expect the sales, right? I say this a lot, but no one cares about your brand until they know your story. Same thing with your book. No one cares about your book until they know the story, right? The backstory. Man, so much good talking points. What would you say is the takeaway message you want the listeners to take away from this episode? Because you could probably tell as the minutes went on in conversation, I'm getting more fired up. I'm like, I'm getting more, because there's so much gems here. And if you haven't wrote a book yet, I'll be quite honest with you. You don't know the struggles. You don't, like, if you're not in the game, it's a little different. It hits different, Judy. I'll be honest with you, when you've made the mistakes, right? I've asked you some questions and I'm like, man, I've made that mistake, or that's something I avoided, or I know that. But the message resonates with you a little different if you're an author, if you're in the process of writing. Man, they're so good. But what would you say is the takeaway message you want listeners to take away from the conversation that we had today?
I think the biggest takeaway is, if you take consistent action, if you are in conversation with your audience, over time, your book will continue to sell. And if you are committed to doing something that is integral, you're with a nonfiction book, it should tie into your business. So if you think about it this way, you're promoting you, your book and your business. They're not separate pieces. They're all one whole ecosystem. And you're doing a disservice if you don't share what you know. So, if you've solved a problem and you don't tell people the way to do it, you're not helping. And I really believe, it's a community activity. You want to share with your community, you want to be with people, you want to be helpful. And what you know is valuable. Be proud of sharing it. And you don't have to be loud to be proud of what you know. You just have to stand in your truth and be willing to be in a conversation. That's my message. All marketing is a conversation.
Love that. Judy, please shout out your social media, your website. Where can we follow you, keep up with your amazing content, subscribe to what you have going on?
Well, I want to offer something. You can find me at bookmarketingmentor.com. That's my website. And from there, you will find the links to all of my social profiles. I've got a link tree page so you can find everything. And if you are an author, you're an aspiring author of a nonfiction book, I want to invite you to, come talk to me for a consultation. No sales. A 30-minute consultation where we focus on you and what your challenges are. And that is at bookbuzzaudit.com. And you can schedule that right on my calendar and we'll have a conversation and see what's going on with you.
Awesome. All right, man, this was really good. Yeah, so much, again, just so much gems. I'm so kind of like stuck on, but it's very simple. But as easy as it is for us to do it, sometimes it's just as easy for us not to do it. But all conversations are marketing, and there's a lot of opportunity being left on the table for authors. Safe to say,
Yeah.
a lot of
Oh,
opportunity.
absolutely.
A
Yep.
lot of opportunity. Okay. Well, like I always say, what good is information if you don't apply it? This was a incredible conversation from start to finish. My notepad is just literally just filled with notes here, because again, there's just so much that we can do, but we have to focus on implementing the right action and taking action now. This was good. Judy, I want to thank you so much for spending your time with me today. You've just poured and poured and poured and poured until you couldn't pour anymore. And I'm grateful. The listeners are grateful. For the aspiring authors that are listening to this, um, reach out to Judy. Schedule the call. If she's offering you 30 minutes and you've listened to this from start to finish and you haven't scheduled a meeting, that's a problem. All right. Nothing's more expensive than a missed opportunity. You want to make sure that you're taking advantage of the opportunity. All right. So schedule the meeting. Judy, thank you so much. Like always, don't forget to like and subscribe to the St. Clair Speaks Show podcast. I will catch you in the next episode.